Welcome to the Jeremiah Show.
Hey there. How are you doing?
Hey, John. That's the voice of John Ross. He's my special guest today. Before I bring him in completely, I'm going to embarrass him just a little bit and sing his praises to the heavens here. John is a hero of mine, and I'm going to explain why. I'm a child raised on movies and film and music. It's where I find inspiration in a dark room when I'm immersed in a movie that just you know the feeling. You've been there, with those carefully crafted scenes, the great lighting, like only Hollywood can provide, stunning cinematography, a story that pulls you in and is told through the actors, and you feel like you are a part of this world, right? It's all of these elements and so many more that make up a great film. And and movies, there's a reason for all of these things. They all serve to tell a story. One of the main and most powerful forces for me is the music. If you've ever listened or watched a movie that has not been scored yet, you know what I mean. The music, without music, I don't think cinema would be half what it is. It really is a current. It's a careful manipulator of your emotions. A good score for me lifts me high. It can make me cry. And the music compels me to feel empathy and remember that I'm alive. Normal life rarely makes me feel these things like film and music do. Movies are magic. Music is magic. And when they combine, for me, they help me express and understand my feelings better. If I want someone to really understand me, I show them a movie that I love. Without movies or music, I would have, I'm borrowing this, no guru, no method, no teacher. And so it stands to reason that the creative and the talented people who build these worlds, these lessons between these two mediums, I hold imperative to my survival in life. I'm not being dramatic. These creative people, these music artists, these producers and filmmakers are held up in the highest regard for me. I celebrate them the only way that I know how, which is to share their story with you. My special guest today is one such creative soul, but he is so much more. He is an innovator in the industry. He's forever seeking out and developing new and better ways to bring the magic to us. Like Louis Le Prince, who worked on a model that captured motion in the 1800s, and Thomas Edison and the Lumiere brothers that invented the equipment that made the movie and moving images possible, like Dr. Herbert Kalmus, Daniel Frost Comstock, and William Burton Westcott. You may not know these names; they're not names that we bat around often, but they created Technicolor motion pictures. And finally, like Ray Dolby's work in noise reduction and surround sound technologies, my special guest, John Ross, joins this elite small group of innovators, and he continues the development and music and motion pictures, making it better for us every day. John Ross is the president and the founder of Laurel Canyon Live. With over 200 motion picture credits, he moved back to his first love of music and combined the skills from the traditional motion picture production and music production into a new venture that streams live music concerts to mobile devices, televisions, and motion picture theaters. John has worked with IMAX on their IMAX Live initiative and for Taylor Swift's Eras Tour motion picture and Beyonce's Renaissance Tour motion picture. Welcome, John.
Hi there. Why, thank you.
So,
Nice to be
so
here.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do. In case I forget to tell you 5 times throughout the show, are you? I was just looking, doing some research. It looks like were you out in Las Vegas? Or are you in Las Vegas right now at the NAB show?
No, 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 no. But I was at NAB as every year going there, just sort of seeing what's new because everybody rolls out the new toys, and you get to speak to old friends and interface with folks. So absolutely, I was there. But
Yeah, it was a good time. Is
oh,
it
it was
NAB
great.
or NAB? Do you say it
Well,
NAB?
National Association of Broadcasters, so NAB.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But great show.
Yeah, when I saw that, I'm like, what? I saw it ends today, and I'm like, I wonder if he's out in Vegas right now. And I appreciate you doing the interview. So, Sean, let's start in the beginning in your early days. Who was young John Ross, and what did he want to do with his life?
Well, I was born in South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, and I was a musician from the age of about 9. Always fascinated with tech as well. My mother would buy a clock or buy a radio. Shame. And the minute it got home, it was taken apart and sometimes put back together correctly and sometimes not. But that was just,
That's
a
great.
fascination that I had. And So basically what happened is, in South Africa at the time, used to have to go into the army. After that, I got a job with a gentleman or a company called the Quabell Brothers that did a lot of they used to bring a lot of acts to South Africa, such as Tina Turner and all these folks. And then I got offered a job at a place called Sun City, not the Sun City in California, but the Sun City in Southern Africa, which is basically sort of a Vegas, their version of the Vegas setup. And there, worked with a bunch of artists. Gosh, Queen were there, tons of different folks. And through that, got offered a job to work for Diana Ross. So I came out when I was 24 years old, just turned 24. Um, Joined her in Hartford, Connecticut, and that was sort of how I got into the live portion of it. And that's actually how I got into this country. Met a wife, met my wife, sorry, and stayed, and this has been my home ever since 1983.
Oh, that's great. So you answered my question. I was gonna say, how old were you? You say you were 24. When did you get into? So you were I guess the technical term is you're like a live concert mix engineer. Is that right? Would that be
I've
your?
worn, yeah, at the time. At the time, that's what I was doing. Yeah, so I was the guy who sits in the audience and mixes for the audience, um, which is great. When you're 23, 24, I was given a nice opportunity to basically mix front of house for Diana Ross, which typically comes a little later in one's career if you're going to do that,
Yeah.
because she was basically Beyonce back in those days.
Right. She was.
Um,
She
and
still can stand right next to her, I think.
For sure, and she does in the Renaissance film. But the yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. I was very very lucky. And
So you're that
it's been
guy that's like right in the middle when you're in a concert and it's basically like a massive soundboard, right? But you look like you're the DJ
pretty
almost, right?
much,
Yeah.
yeah. I
And
guess, yeah. It's the previous century's version of a DJ. Yes. I mean,
and
you still do it. They still do it, obviously. The gears
and you get a
changed a
lot of
lot, but we still
attention,
do
I'm
it.
sure, especially at that age, 24. What was your favorite part of that time of your life?
It was just, like when I came here, I sold everything I had in South Africa, and I had $4,000 and a guitar, and that was my life basically. But I did have a good job, at least for 3 months, touring with Diana Ross. So I got to do the United States, Canada, do all that kind of good stuff, and everything was exciting. There's nothing,
Yeah.
everything was new, everything was exciting, so it was great.
Big
Um,
and wide eyes.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, no. I was the kid who sort of was wide awake on the bus, on the tour bus, and would look
Yeah.
out the
Why
window
you
the whole
guys
time while everybody
sleeping?
else was playing cards. Yeah. But no, it was a great time, and she was fantastic and very generous. And it was a good experience. Uh, you know, Beyond that, I worked with Thomas Dolby and some of the more sort of innovative um, the people that were pushing the technical envelope at the time. And when I say technical envelope, it's things like the early CMIs and MIDI and things which we sort of just take for granted now. But back then, this was in the 80s. It was new technologies, new frontiers. So came off the road and opened up a tiny little recording studio based around some of these emerging technologies. And we were lucky enough to work on, gosh, we laid down some of the parts, and what the Paula Abdul, her two big hits, and various other things like that. So it was great. It was a tiny little 800 square foot studio, and then we had this idea to take some of this technology and start using it for post-production for movies. Didn't know anything about how post-production was done, but I knew this technology. So what we did is I bought a system called a Fairlight Series 3 back in the day, which was, gosh, I think it's about a $90,000 piece of hardware. Um, expensive. So what happened is we went to the thing called the Showbiz Expo, which was this trade show for production and post production, which they had once or twice in Los Angeles. We set up a booth where I would basically I put myself out as a film composer and also this post production guy doing things with keyboards with computers. Um, we were lucky enough some producer came along and thought it was a pretty cool idea that you could actually do sound effects and stuff with a quote unquote piano. And so they hired us to do a whole bunch of these really, really low budget films, which is fantastic because we had no idea how it's done. We kind of made it up as we went along. We
Yeah.
learned to shave on somebody else's face, as they say. So it was a cool adventure, and they were brave enough to hire us, and or silly enough, I'm not quite sure, but it was a good thing, and it was a great, because we didn't know anything about the business. You come in with totally fresh perspectives, and sometimes you solve problems in a unique way by doing that, purely out of naivety. And when you look back at them, they're relatively innovative,
Hmm.
and some of them are just dumb. So, but that's what
John, do
happens
you?
when you have no prior knowledge.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kind of an interesting point to stop on and think about for a second. So when you look at it, like why can't like for you, that through your eyes, do you look at something and say, well, we're trying, it could be this, how do we get from there to here? And why can't it be that? And then you just start like you did back with your mom's appliances, you start taking it apart and
Yeah,
tinkering. And is that, I mean, do
yeah,
you
that's kind
have
of
like a thought that every time you look at something or see something, go, why can't it be this? Do you have, is that a natural,
it's
thought pattern for you?
well, I think it's more about sort of seeing the finished result somehow. I imagine that it could. I see where it's going to go. I have no idea how I'm going to get there. I mean, literally, that's how there's a whole story of which how we got through the whole Laurel Canyon thing was exactly the same. But that has been sort of a modus operandi for pretty much my whole life. The in our old when we had that old studio, we did a bunch of these little films, and then we took that little 800 square foot facility and rented an 8,000 square foot facility. Maxed out our credit cards and did whatever you need to do to get from point A to point B. Still not exactly knowing how we're going to do post production, but sort of invented this whole different way of doing it, and we built it around how you might publish a newspaper. So we as we grew and grew, we were in Silicon Graphics servers, and we made our own RAID arrays out of 9 gig drives, which, by the way, took up half a wall. And so we had sort of a different approach to how things were done in post production. And as it turned out, it was actually a lot more effective than how it was classically done. So we did a bunch of films. We did the Austin Powers films, gosh, American History X. And there's a bunch of films that were done sort of in that way back in the day. We sold that company in '99 to become part of a lot larger operation called Four Media, which in turn was bought by Liberty Media, which was a bunch of 80% post production here in Los Angeles was acquired,
Mm.
and
So the
and we were
company
part
you
of that.
sold, John, I'm sorry to interrupt you, just
Sure.
to frame a reference for me and for the listeners. What the company that you started and that you sold was Digital Sound and Pictures. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
DSP, as we used to refer to it. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was great. We had great staff. We had a real sort of us against the world mentality because we were the only kids doing it differently. And ironically, they are going to have a 20-year reunion up here soon, purely generated from them, not us, which is fantastic. But just a great sort of collegial
Yeah.
atmosphere. Just people thinking out of the box, which is wonderful.
Did you
Um,
find people that thought like you, or did you find, was that a, or did they come to you and then you were this oracle, this person that said, we're going to find a way, and then they rose up, and then you created these thinkers and these innovators, or how
uh,
did you find stuff like that
I
are
I
still
think I think there's sort of a natural thing that occurs. You know, if people who are attracted to that sort of thing are going to come and find you, and vice versa. You know, I remember doing a presentation up in Disney, and they brought me in on this little panel purely to talk about this other way of doing it, so that they could kind of beat up on us a little bit, or me. And the irony was that at the end of this presentation, some young people came up and said, "By the way, that thing that I just showed you, I did it all on a workstation." You know, just you could see this, the times that were changing, and so these people were looking, they were gravitating to what other people that sort of thought the way that they thought. And
so
so,
great?
a lot of them found us, we found them, just great people, and who to this day are very well established in this business. Because I remember somebody from Fox came up to me one day, and he said to me, he said, "You hire them, sorry, you train them, I'll hire them." So that was his thing, sort of. That was it was proved to be a fertile ground for sort of young people doing some really, very, very cool things. But it was purely them. I mean, they're fantastic folks, and we were very blessed to have them.
How many times have you been told that that can't be done by studios or executives or the industry over
Always.
the years?
the
Always.
safest, the safest, the safest word, and I think it's the thing that paralyzes most people, is the word no, because it's the safest thing, really. At least that's the perception thereof. And most people, when you run an idea by them, or you run a concept by them, they put themselves into that equation, whether they could personally deal with it or think it through or not, and hence the word no, or are you sure, or some form of negative spin on it. I have found that, I've been lucky enough to know a lot of people who've done who've done things with their lives, and when you hang around those people, you realize the word yes is actually even more powerful. And so. Yeah, you just got to try. You just got to step one foot in front of the other until eventually you turn around and you realize the journey that you've done.
That that's an incredible story. So John, if someone's listening out there, young, a young John Ross, what are the have you pinpointed areas that you think need to be improved? And is there a personal message you give a listener like that, a young John Ross, like someone an innovator, somebody up and coming, with like, go after this, try to make this
I think I think
better?
and I say this often when people say, how did you get into business? What do you do? You know, my son wants to learn this, or my daughter wants to learn this. Is just find something that fascinates you. If you're fascinated by a subject, you'll become an expert. There's no university in the world that's going to teach you. If you love football, there's no university in the world that'll teach you anything more about football than you really want to know, because you can find all that information. It's all out there, especially now. And so you'll have, when you look back on the people like, the Steve Jobs, is the Bill Gates of the world, most of them they didn't get there, or even Elon Musk, they didn't get through universities. Sometimes universities were sort of a minor stepping stone. They were just purely fascinated by the subject matter, and went out of their way to become experts at it, which just happens naturally, I think, if, once again, you're fascinated. So the bottom line is, if find something that really, really turns you on, just do it until, you will be the best you possibly can be at that, if indeed you're fascinated.
It's a good advice. It also sounds like that you took a lot of risks financially, that you didn't, you came here with nothing,
Of
and
course.
you leased things, you rented things, you put it on credit, and you made and created these businesses and created these technologies. It is you said no is something that's safe, and that stops most people when they get to know. Financial also stops them, and would you recommend just making it happen if you love it and you believe in it? Is that
Yeah.
part of the ingredient, the, the,
Well,
the
I
mix?
think I think fear is the greatest motivator, and sadly, a lot of people who sort of do do get success as they pushed through this thing, they realized it was actually a lot easier than, or in many cases, I'm generalizing here, but I think when they look back, they go, "Wow, I really didn't have to have that fear," And a lot of people just never get off the couch because of the fear. So I think the concept of safety is just as big an illusion than the concept of the quote unquote danger. How many people in companies that they think are safe are one board meeting away from being thrown on the street,
It's
with no
so true.
plan B.
Yeah.
So I discount this concept of I'll play it safe. I think it's not as dangerous as you think, and it's also not as safe as you think, if that makes any sense to you.
It makes total sense, and it's true, and it's harder sometimes too. You hear the no and you stop. You get afraid that you can't make it, and it's a hard business to make it in, or it's hard out there, and then you don't. And isn't it hard to not follow through and find out if you could have done it? I mean, I think that's the worst. That's the worst. I don't know. Part about having that fear. It's that if you don't follow through, then you never know. And you never will know. And
Exactly. I mean,
living
I
with
remember
that.
my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, who also started a business and pretty much had a similar profile to my wife and myself, had this when they bought their first quote unquote real car. They took a picture in front of the car with their arms up and just shrugging their shoulders. And the message of that picture was, we didn't have this before. What's the worst thing that happens? They take it away. Nothing really changes. We can still breathe. We can still do whatever we need to do. So, don't let that fear sort of get in your way, because we're not dodging snipers. At least we're not. People in the world sadly are, but
Mhm.
we have a lot of things going for us. So you know, don't worry,
I love.
don't worry, be happy, right?
Yeah, yeah, live for right now. And again, that's why I wanted to thank you. This will be my second time. I want to thank you, John, for what you do, because you find out in life also that if you get the opportunity with someone, I was just reflecting as I was listening to your stories. When I got I have this opportunity to spend a few minutes with you, and what an incredible opportunity, and share a little bit of your wisdom and your story. So again, thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for being here. Okay, we're going to take our first break. My special guest today is John Ross. He's the president and the founder of Laurel Canyon Live. What is Laurel Canyon Live? You're wondering, and you're going to find out soon. We're going to tell you all about it. You can go to laurelcanyon/live.com. And on the webpage, you'll find it's really an app. John's going to explain this better for us in a moment. But you want to download the app, and it's an app that you're going to want to have on your phone. And I'm not going to tell you about it. We'll let John tell you about it in just a moment. Let's take that quick break. Again, Laurel Canyon live.com, and you'll find out where you can get the app. You can get it everywhere. You can get it at the App Store, Android. We'll be right back. Again, my special guest today, John Ross, president and founder of Laurel Canyon Live.